Everyone talks about beef as the nutrient-dense superfood. And it is. After all, I do raise beef. But here's what almost no one knows. Pasture-raised chicken, it carries therapeutic compounds also. And in some cases, it's actually the better option. Let's start with what matters most, the facts and the fix. So even if you only stay for a minute, you're going to leave with value. No doubt beef is a nutrient-dense food. After all, it does contain core nutrients like iron, zinc, B12, even creatine, which we hear so much about now. And I got to tell you, after raising beef for so many years, it definitely deserves its reputation. And no doubt beef is a consistent part of my own personal diet. But there is another part to this story you need to know, and it comes around, or it's related to pasture-raised chicken. And interestingly, pasture-raised chicken carries more nutrients, more therapeutic nutrients in some cases, even than beef does. For example, if you're looking to try to consume nutrients that are going to offset inflammation, if you want to enhance your mood and optimize your mood and your neurological health, or if you just want to have an easier time with digesting your food, you probably should look at chicken. And there's some core reasons as to why that is. And I'm just going to share a few of the big ones with you. There's nutrients named carnosine and anserine. These are powerful anti-inflammatories. You have high amounts of taurine, which can benefit your neurological health. It can benefit your cardiovascular system. You think about nutrients like collagen, glycine, taurine. These are going to come from the chicken skin, and you can even find these when you use the chicken carcass to make broth with. They're also great for gut repair because they all contain collagen precursors. And then core nutrients like selenium, which is beneficial for your thyroid and your immune system. And not to mention that some people just find chicken easier to digest. It tends to be a little bit of a lighter meat for many individuals, and that has a lot to do with a lower concentration of connective tissue and just lower amounts of fat that you're going to find in chicken. So this isn't really about a chicken versus a beef conversation, so to say, about choosing one versus choosing the other. In fact, I don't do that. I eat both of these in my diet. But what this conversation is really meant to be about is finally giving chicken its rightful place as a therapeutic food and not as a second-class citizen, if you will, in the food category. When chicken is raised right, and that is really probably the key to this whole conversation that I'm having with you today, chicken can be an extremely valuable food to have in your dietary rotation. Now, let me share with you the fact that I am just getting started, and if you'd like to hear more about what I'm going to share in more details on this topic, then go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and while you're here, go ahead and leave a comment so others can see maybe how you have chicken in your diet or how you think about chicken versus beef. So yeah, stick around and we're going to dive into what makes chicken a therapeutic food and where does it stack up against beef and ultimately how to support your overall metabolic health here. And if you've never watched one of my videos, guys, I'm Dr. Arland Hill. I'm both a clinician and a rancher, and as you've already probably heard me say, I raise both beef and chicken, pasture-raised chicken to be exact. And I care about one thing, and that's giving you how real food works with your physiology and not against it. I've heard individuals specifically refer to chicken and other poultry as inferior meats. Hold on. Are we talking about the same pasture-raised chicken? The answer to that is no. And in fact, much of chicken's reputation as an inferior meat, as an inferior protein source, ultimately came from just talking about the wrong type of chicken. We're thinking industrial chicken is what created this wrong protein myth, not pasture-raised chicken. Industrial chicken is raised in confinement, in unnatural settings where you have no sunlight. It's just artificial light all the time. In fact, I'm always kind of intrigued. There's some conventional industrial chicken houses on the way to our chicken processor, and literally you go past these chicken houses and it's still dark when we're driving to our small farm processor. You literally see that the lights in these facilities are on every single time you go by there. It's artificial lighting, so it's unnatural. And if you've never had an opportunity to look inside of a confined chicken house, let's just say you haven't missed much, because there's not much in there other than dirt and poultry manure. That's pretty much what is in that environment. And you can't look at that environment and think by any stretch that that's a natural habitat for that animal. And of course, that means that there's going to be compromises, there's going to be disruption to their natural rhythm. And no matter how much you make the claim that that animal is just as healthy, when you're disrupting that much of its environment and you're changing the feed supply for it compared to what an animal out on pasture is consuming, it's just not a comparable conversation. For example, I mean, if you're just really pushing grains in these animals, then you've got so much omega-6 overload here that of course there's going to be an omega-3, omega-6 imbalance in this. So it's very easy to make that argument. But again, you're making an argument for why poultry is inferior based off of the industrial model. It's a nutrient poor environment, and that environment defines the animal. And it's interesting when you go past, like I mentioned, that you see these chicken houses when we go to our processor. Where I originally grew up, my family farm, the adjacent farm, also had conventional chicken houses on it as well. So I got to see a lot of these things firsthand. And it was always interesting to me, and it's even more so now as I've gotten older, that almost all of these are out of the public eye. That's not by accident. That is an intentional act. So if you think about these animals living in these high stress environments, it's going to create poor meat quality. Just think about your own health. When you're under a chronic stress scenario and you're having to deal with that high stress on an ongoing time frame, your health is going to succumb as a part of that. It's going to suffer. And what that looks like in these chickens is that just from an eating experience, you're going to have more bland flavor. You're going to have lower nutrient density. These things are all the antithesis of what we desire in the foods that we're eating. And this is the chicken that most people judge the entire category by. You compare that against pasture-raised birds where they're out eating their natural forage. And yes, and I'll speak for Harvest Hills Ranch here, we do supplement our animals with feed, but I'm very matter of fact about what feeds we use. I don't use soy, I don't use corn, and we're using organic. Of course, that means it's also going to be non-GMO. So we're checking all the boxes to make sure that these animals are getting what they need. There's fish meal in the feed that we give them. So we're getting a good high quality protein source. And when you combine that with what they're getting on the pasture, when they're eating the bugs, when they're pecking at the grass and using some of that as well, they're not going to sustain on grass. So you can't say that you're going to feed out a chicken on grass. That's not reality. But my point is that these animals are moving around. It's a healthier environment. You've got better, more developed muscle tissue, a better overall fatty acid profile just because of what they have access to. The soil that they're packing around in, it's going to contain minerals in there. So you may find the selenium, and like when they're eating the grass, there's carotenoids, there's antioxidants. If they're pecking around at different weeds, forbs, if you will, however you want to say those are going to have medicinal elements to them as well. And that all goes up the food chain. And then you have them out in the sunlight, and there's just going to be a more natural rhythm to the sun going up, the sun going down, and that animal being exposed to that. That is creating a more stable environment for that animal. That is their natural environment. It is a less stressful environment for that animal, for that bird. And that just creates a totally different physiological outcome. And as a byproduct of that, you're getting a healthier meat. So it's not comparable in any way to what you're finding with store-bought chicken. And when you change that bird's environment, understand that changing the environment is changing their biology. Those two things go hand in hand. And of course, if you change the biology, you're changing the nutritional quality of that product as well, of that poultry, of that chicken. And all of these things are what, when you look at these differences of how we compare beef versus chicken, let's make sure that we're comparing apples to apples here. Let's take a grass-fed and finished beef and compare that against a pasture-raised bird. So that's the first thing we need to acknowledge here. And while beef gets all the credit and chicken really gets none, everyone knows when you look at beef, like I mentioned earlier on, iron, zinc, B12, creatine, you've got conjugated linoleic acid gets pointed to a lot of times here. That's a valuable, extremely valuable fatty acid. It has this deep, rich micronutrient profile. And again, guys, I raise beef. I enjoy talking about grass-fed, grass-finished beef and the value, the therapeutic value that it brings. In fact, I consume it multiple times a week. But I am also consuming chicken multiple times a week as well. And that chicken it's quietly kind of in the shadows bringing along some therapeutic compounds that beef doesn't exactly match up to. What are some of the examples of that? Well, chicken is going to be higher in anserine. Now, you have anserine and carnosine. Anserine and carnosine are both antioxidants. They're anti-inflammatory. Anserine tends to be higher in chicken. Carnosine tends to be higher in beef. But the point is that there is some direct anti-inflammatory benefit from anserine. So that's one. Chicken also is going to be higher in taurine. Now, taurine, even from our very earliest developmental phases, when we're still in utero, when a fetus is developing and mom's having access to adequate amounts of taurine, that is directly impacting the neurological state of that fetal development. So it's extremely important throughout the entire lifespan. Neurological health, cardiovascular benefits associated with it. And there's just more, for gram, there's more taurine in chicken than there is in beef. And so it's just naturally higher in the diet in that animal, and then that translates into it's going to be naturally higher in the final meat. And there's also, when you have lower stressed animals, it's also been shown that animals that are raised in a lower stress environment, so animals specifically in this context, meaning chickens that are raised in a lower stress environment, in their natural environment, are going to have higher amounts of taurine in their muscle meat. And so we can see that evidence does exist to substantiate that differentiation between the environment that the bird is raised in. Now, you also get glycine, gelatin, whether you're eating the skin. My wife made a whole chicken a few days ago, and it was sitting out on our island. And one of the things that I did is I went and started pulling off the skin and eating the skin. I just had an affinity for that skin, and I like the skin of our animals. I know what fatty acids are in there. I know there's going to be collagen precursors in there. So whether I'm supporting my joints, my gut, I'm getting the benefit by eating that skin. And it's very easy to consume. It's very palatable, has a great flavor to it, right? And so you get all of that much easier than you do with beef. And for some individuals, chicken is just easier to digest. And maybe it's easier to go the opposite direction with this and say that beef can be a challenge for some individuals to digest. It takes longer to digest. You rarely hear that same comment being made about chicken. It just digests faster. And if someone is struggling with some gut dysfunction, maybe they've got some inflammation going on in their gut, chicken could be the better option for them. There's less connective tissue in your chicken than there is in beef. And there's also a lower density of fat. So you just have less fat overall in chicken than you do compared to beef. And those things can make it easier to digest. It can allow how fast that food leaves the stomach. That's called gastric emptying. It can allow that gastric emptying to be much more efficient. And if someone's dealing with that inflammation, if they're dealing with some type of infection or overgrowth, imbalance of the microorganisms in their gut, that could also translate into that is a less symptomatic individual after they eat if they ate the chicken compared to the beef. And that's just anecdotal. So I'm not quoting a study or thinking of a particular study as I'm sharing that with you. It's just anecdotal observation, okay? So take it for what it's worth, try it for yourself, see if you get the same outcome. You look at these individuals or these chickens, these birds, and remember, there's also the omega-3 component here, which means that you're going to have a different fat profile based on the forage that bird is consuming. Now, when it comes to chicken, let me just give you sort of who the target is on this. If I'm thinking, well, who's chicken really a good option for? I mentioned the gut infections, the overgrowth, these types of individuals. If you have low stomach acid, you could be a good fit for chicken. It's just easier to digest. If you've got motility issues, so your bowels don't move as frequently as they should, maybe chicken's a good option for you. If you want to heal your gut, and that could be because you're getting the collagen component. If you're making a broth or if you're eating the skins, some kids who claim to have sensitive stomachs, or they're just not, they're not at a point where they're consuming beef as a regular part of their diet, chicken's a bit easier, more palatable. I think we often see kids reach for chicken more than they do beef if they got to choose between the two. But I would say on that too, make sure that you encourage the beef. You really want that diversity of palate there, and you really do still want to harness the benefits of what are found in beef. Anxious or stressed individuals, just where you need to get in more of the taurine, you need to get more protein in, chicken can be an easy way to accomplish that. Maybe you've got some thyroid concerns and you want to get, or some immune system dysfunction, which oftentimes goes with the thyroid. Maybe you want to get more selenium in to help modulate that thyroid function. Chicken's a good option here. And if your just GI tract is just recovering overall and you're trying to think, okay, where do I start with this? What's my first step to improve my gut health? Well, chicken, as far as a protein source, could be the first avenue for you. And when you think about how much the wrong chicken tends to dominate the chicken conversation, and you contrast that to everything that I've shared with you at this point, hopefully when you look at these labels and you're really thinking through, is something pasture raised? Do I know where this is coming from? Hopefully you'll recognize that if you have a true knowledge of where your food is being sourced from, you developed a relationship with a local farm or ranch, then you won't see that poultry source, that chicken source, or even turkey, you won't see that as inferior, because ultimately, if you're looking to compare this to beef, if you think about where beef probably does win at, and I think this is fair, here's where beef wins at. If you need to improve your iron levels, okay, beef wins on that. If you need to improve your B12, your zinc, your beef's going to win on that. If you want to improve muscle strength, if you're looking to maybe have some more fats in and affect cholesterol and have more hormone precursor support, depending on what kind of hormones you're talking about here, whether it's the more cholesterol based or whether it's the protein based, beef is going to be a better option on that. General metabolic repair, higher creatine, like these are the things that I would think about. If I just want to stay satiated for a much longer period of time, beef is what I'm thinking about. And to me, the way that I tend to think about beef is that it's a structural builder. If I need to build something structurally, beef is what I'm going to lean into. But where does chicken win at? Because this is the other side, right? And so if I'm thinking gut repair because of the gelatin or the collagen that you get, the glycine, the proline, all these things that you're going to be able to source from the broth. If I want to heal my gut lining, that mucosal lining, there's a reason that they say drink broth when you're sick. If I want to reduce the digestive burden, so I just want to consume more easily digestible food, and maybe I have some type of overgrowth or infection in the gut, chicken makes more sense. If I need to support my nervous system directly, if I'm thinking about taurine because of that the calming effect that it has on the nervous system, the anserine because of its anti-inflammatory activity. Remember, selenium and thyroid, these are going to affect your nervous system as well. Chicken's the better option here. Well, what about digestion? Well, maybe you've got low stomach acid, or maybe you're having low enzyme production, or maybe you've got reflux. I don't generally hear many people complaining, oh, I developed I experienced reflux after I ate some chicken, some appropriately raised chicken. Yeah, you don't generally hear that. Or maybe if you just got kids that you need to get a consistent protein source into them and they're going to be willing to consume that, that's where chicken fits in. So if beef is the builder, right? I'm giving you ways to think about this. If beef is the builder, then chicken, maybe we can position as the therapeutic healer. And you need both. It's not that one is better than the other, but my point to this whole video is that I just simply want you to give chicken its due. I want you to think about chicken in a different way, and I certainly don't want you thinking about it as an inferior food source. The way that we raise animals, when they're raised as nature intended, that's when you're going to maximize, when you're sourcing that in your diet, that's where you're going to maximize all these benefits that I've been sharing with you throughout this video. And if you're looking for ways to just try to use chicken more strategically in your diet and not just randomly consume foods or whatever's available, like, or just be intentional with your diet, rotate the beef with the chicken, right? Have a full micronutrient perspective, and not even just micronutrients, just have a full nutritional perspective. Think about trying to maintain your gut health or even heal your gut health. Maybe you had a bit of a gut disturbance there. That's where chicken comes into play. The other thing I would tell you on this is the cuts of meat that you eat matter. So if you're a person who just consumes chicken breast, one, you're missing out because the flavor in chicken thighs is unbelievable, right? And so if you found that you're just in the pattern of eating chicken breast, understand that when you're only eating the white meat, the light colored meat, and you're not eating the dark meat like the thighs and the drumsticks, you're also leaving on the table taurine and some other minerals that are inherently in higher concentrations in those cuts of meat. And that's what you want to take advantage of. So it's really about consuming these pasture-raised sources, making sure that you're not having compromises in your diet. And if you think about beef as the system builder, think about chicken as your therapeutic healer, right? That's the key differentiation I want to leave you with on this. And here's the cool thing. When both of these are coming from the pasture, the nutritional partnership between those two, you're getting the full spectrum of nutrients that are going to absolutely optimize your health. Chicken and beef both belong on a nutrient-dense plate. They're not competitors. They should never be thought about as competitors. These guys are allies. They're more partners than anything else. And if beef is your system builder, then chicken is your repairer for the system when that's necessary. And when both of these are coming from the pasture, the body gets the full benefit of what nature intended, which is ultimately what you're looking for in all of your diet. So if this has helped you reframe how you think about chicken, it's no longer the inferior food, well, make sure you give this video a like. And if you want to dive deeper into what food as medicine really looks like, well, then check out this next video that I recorded. It's waiting for you right here on the screen.